Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Happy Juneteenth, everybody! I'm actually pretty ecstatic to talk about this episode because a lot of interesting things happened in the news, and the subject of this video is going to be pretty interesting. So, with all that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, we're going to be going to Argentina, because Argentina has recently done an interesting thing in regards to their upcoming election. The Frente de Todos coalition is out, and the new coalition is Unión por la Patria. Basically, what they did was they just reformed the governing coalition to distance themselves from the incumbent government, because Alberto Fernandez is an incredibly unpopular politician. I honestly don't understand why he's so unpopular, to be honest. Maybe if I was in Argentina, I'd understand it better. Maybe the population just really does not have a thing for Kirchner and associates of hers anymore. And since the Frente de Todos coalition was sort of, literally supposed to be a reformation of the Kirchner coalition, basically purely in name as well, this is another way to try and distance themselves from the incumbent government. Sadly, I won't be able to talk about this election until the runoff, I think. But it is interesting just to see how this election is panning out. One candidate that I'm very interested in is Juan Grabois, or Grabois. But basically, he's this activist who led a bunch of student movements. And he's leading the party and the governing, he's part of a party called the Patria Grande Frente, Frente de Patria Grande, the Great Homeland Front. Basically, it's the idea that Chavez and a bunch of the other 21st century socialists, espouse of, a united Latin America, with 21st century socialism literally being part of their ideology, but they're also Kirchnerist, just because that's part of the main ideology. But he's more than likely not going to be the candidate moving forward, and even if he is, there's a good chance that he might lose because the country is really fascinated with this anarcho-capitalist guy instead. Speaking of Latin American elections, the country of Mexico has basically just steamrolled into beginning their election process. You see, almost immediately after the state of Mexico and Coahuila gubernatorial elections, the Morena just immediately started the process to move into the next, to move forward to the presidential election. And when I say they move forward fast, I mean literally, I thought this was still going to be a longer process. But in the time since the last episode, they have not only figured out how they want to do the upcoming elections, but they have already closed the nominations for the upcoming elections, at least on the Morena side. The other parties and people who want to contend in the election, they still got whatever they want to do. But the Juntos Hacemos Historia coalition has closed the doors on their nomination process. And here's what the process is going to be. So first, they stated that this decision will be conducted via 5 polls, and whoever is the top person at the end of all the polls will be the candidate. The polls will be conducted like this. There will be one that is governed by the party itself. Then the remaining 4 will be pollsters that are given the chance to ask voters who they want. And what is interesting is that they say that anybody can participate in these polls, not just people who are Morena people or even people in their coalition. Anybody can participate in the polls. Nominations would close on June 16th, which is the day I'm recording this. Only 6 people would be allowed to run in the Juntos Hacemos Historia coalition, primary. And lastly, something that was specifically put forward by Marcelo Ebrard was that all of the people who want to participate in this process have to resign from whatever government position that they have currently. That way they can't use that position to gain political favor in the election. And another interesting thing is that Morena people are forbidden from endorsing anybody in the upcoming primary process. And one weird thing is that there will not be any debates, although Marcelo Ebrard is intending to try and change that. And all of the candidates have signed up. They only allowed 6 people, and 6 people have already signed up to be the candidates for Morena in the upcoming election. I posted a picture, but for those who haven't seen it or want to hear it, here are the 6 people who intend to run to be the torchbearer for the Juntos Hacemos Historia Coalition. First, we have 2 people who are not of Morena. That's a very interesting thing, because 2 people are not of Morena, and they're actually of the coalition parties. They each put one person forward as a potential candidate. PVEM has pushed for the candidacy of a former senator and former governor of Chiapas, Manuel Velasco Coelho, and PT has pushed for the candidacy of Gerardo Fernandez Noroña. But realistically, neither of those 2 have a chance of being the candidate of the coalition, mostly because they are not Morena. Because, even though it is a coalition between the 3, Morena is the party in the coalition that has the most power. Much like how most people see the Va por Mexico coalition as being a vehicle mostly for the PAN, a level above them, meaning some people who have technically a shot at being the presidential candidate, but are probably not going to be it, are Ricardo Monreal, a prominent politician from Zacatecas, and the former Secretary of Interior, Adán Augusto López Hernández. But the 2 people that have almost universally been regarded for a long time as the 2 frontrunners for the race are Marcelo Ebrard, Secretary of Foreign Affairs, and Mayor of Mexico City, Claudia Sheinbaum. Claudia Sheinbaum is going to win 100%. It's just sorry to everybody else in the race, but it's just she's it. She's literally the one candidate that is going to win. She has everything in her route. She's a female. She's Jewish. She's a young candidate. She's younger than basically all the other people in contention. Maybe the exception could be the PVEM guy. He's probably the only person who is younger than her. But basically, she is the one candidate that really makes the most sense to have. And AMLO's basically indicated every step of the way that she will be the candidate. While still having a fair process to choose the candidate, she's basically the one that everybody thinks will be the candidate. And she's also the one that does the best against any of the other candidates that the opposition polls. We'll just have to wait and see how this actual process goes. Speaking of waiting and seeing and presidential bids, there's been an interesting development in regards to the Cornel West presidential bid, as he's announced that he will be seeking the Green Party nomination. What he has stated is, quote, "In the spirit of a broad united front and coalition strategy, I am pursuing the nomination of the Green Party of the United States." This announcement has caused a lot of people to start going crazy, especially considering one big thing that many people have been reading into it that probably aren't actually true. See, with this announcement, people have stated that it's good that Cornel West has finally stopped working with the People's Party, when there hasn't really been anything to indicate that he has disaffiliated with the People's Party or anything of the thing. I saw some people posting tweets from the People's Party or Instagram posts from the People's Party, but I haven't been able to find those actual posts of them mauling over Cornel West leaving the People's Party. But there's been absolutely nothing to indicate that he has left the People's Party. And as his strategy goes, it says that he wants a united front, meaning that what he's trying to do is push for a united front against, I guess, the 2-party duopoly. There really is not much else for me to say on this, because really, this doesn't change anything about the Cornel West bid. The only thing that would functionally change the Cornel West bid is if he announced that he was running as a Democrat. That would be the only thing that would really be a big game changer. It is a game changer of him, running as a Green Party candidate and trying to push for a united left-wing front. But the problem is, it's why didn't he just announce that to begin with? That's confusing about it. Why didn't he announce that at all to begin with? And I have seen a lot of people trying to speculate how many parties that he would run in and will get. Like, there are a lot of people saying that he should run with the Party of Socialism and Liberation, which is never going to happen. Like, he would never run for the Party of Socialism and Liberation, and they would never give him the nomination to begin with. Honestly, Cornel West does not really have that much outreach outside of, like, the Greens and the People's Party, because really, there aren't that many other left-wing parties that would be interested in nominating Cornel West as their nominee. Like, I mean, if you want to go into the idea of, like, running, then he would run for them, plus, I think he would run for the Peace and Freedom Party. That's a pretty obvious one. Most left-wing candidates try to at least get the Peace and Freedom Party nomination. Will he get it? Probably not. The PSL candidate will probably get it. He'd probably also run for the Liberty Union Party nomination, but the PSL candidate would probably get that one as well. Would he run for the Socialist Party nomination? Maybe. Socialist Alternative has already started floating the idea of potentially endorsing Cornel West because they've written an article that's very positive about him, and they said they'll be looking forward and looking into Cornel West's bid, so there's a good chance that they might endorse him as well. But I literally don't see him having that much outreach outside of basically the Howie Hawkins coalition, which was the Greens, the Socialist Party, and Socialist Alternative. Like, that was basically it. There is literally no other left-wing party that I could see endorsing him because most of them are already sectioned off into their own little, like, cliques. I guess if we're in the route of presidential bids, I guess I'll talk about this one too. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez announces GOP presidential bid days after Trump's indictment. If you only get your news from me, then you might be confused about indictment. What, Trump got indicted? But I'm not going to talk about that one until there's an actual thing regarding it. And Francis Suarez, as it says, mayor of Miami. Now, there's a reason why I'm mentioning him and not a couple of other candidates that have announced for the Republican nomination. And that's because, like, Francis Suarez seems to be a little different than the rest of the candidates. You see, because, let me think about it. Let me explain. Francis Suarez literally seems to be the campaign, like the candidate, that actually is a more moderate Republican. Like, he's been very critical of the right wing of the GOP for a bit, mostly revolving around DeSantis and Trump, being critical of both of them and claiming that he didn't vote for Trump in 2020 and he didn't vote for DeSantis in his first bid and voted for Andrew Gillum instead. He did end up voting for DeSantis in the second time, though, saying that he was a better candidate than Charlie Crist. I was going to bring up his age, too, but apparently he's not, like, remotely close to the youngest candidate in the race. I knew Vivek was the youngest candidate at 37, but I also learned that Ronald Dion DeSantis is 44, whereas Suarez is 45. I honestly didn't expect that. I thought DeSantis was like 50. And what is also surprising is that Donald Trump is the oldest candidate in the field on the Republican side at 77. Asa Hutchinson, who looks way older than him, is 72. I also bring up Suarez because, I guess I should say this, it really is starting to look like that the 2024 Republican bids are going to be basically the 2020 Democratic bids. Like, we're already seeing a bunch of candidates that are basically trying to appeal to certain crowds. We're already seeing a lot of candidates that are having beats and phrases basically ripped off directly from the 2020 Democratic candidates. Francis Suarez, one of the more moderate members of his party, who is a young mayor who's trying to propel himself into top priority. We have Vivek, who is a chairman of a business who is trying to run this, like, youth-oriented campaign more oriented to, like, younger people. Ironic, considering he also believes that he should raise the voting age, harping on sort of outsider status. Tim Scott, I'm going to refrain myself from making this comparison. Nikki Haley, probably Warren, I don't know. I'll probably have to get into specifics before I actually, like, say this candidate's like this candidate and this candidate is like this candidate. But I will make one more thing, basically similar to the 2020 elections. When Trump and DeSantis entered, it should have been it for that field. Much like how the Democratic side, when Biden and Bernie entered, that should have been it. Like, literally after Biden entered, he should have literally been the last candidate to enter, because there was no one else who could make a route in that field. But we'll have to wait and see how his bid goes. If I had to take a wild guess, I would say poorly. Speaking of things that went poorly, very sad news coming from Daniel Ellsberg, who has just passed away at 92. If you do not remember, he is a whistleblower who exposed the US government's lies about the Vietnam War by leaking the Pentagon Papers to some of the nation's top newspapers. And it's tragic considering it was basically like a done deal. He was diagnosed with cancer 4 months ago, and he was told that he had 3 to 6 months left. This guy is an icon and has a long-standing history and will be remembered for years. That is all that I have left to say on this topic because mental health is not really good for me in regards to the death field. So I'll just say RIP Daniel Ellsberg and move on to the next story. Twitter has halted the promotion of a campaign video due to abortion advocacy. Now this is interesting because this is actually a candidate from North Carolina. A candidate for lieutenant governor by the name of Rachel Hunt was trying to push for an ad on Twitter, which politicians can't do. Of course, they buy ad space, like corporations that can buy an ad space, especially during election season. You notice that election ads very much go up during election season, so she was looking to buy ad space. However, it was announced to her that she would not be able to get the ad space because she mentioned abortion, even though that's literally the whole point of her campaign, where she was critiquing how North Carolina, one of their state senators, literally just completely flipped and just gave the Republicans everything they wanted about abortion. Cue the part where I say Elon Musk is going against the thing that he said that he was going to do, removing political biases of Twitter. And then cue the random conservatives who really seem to think that they actually were oppressed on Twitter. There's really not much else for me to say on that because it's just pretty blatantly obvious what is happening. So let's move on to the last story. NoLabels is likely to back off the third-party bid if DeSantis emerges as the GOP nominee, basically verifiably proving that NoLabels is Republicans, because Republicans are the only people who actually believe that DeSantis is the moderate in the field. And then we have people on the left who are still trying to claim some sort of superiority in regards to the no-label movement. And it's just kind of so depressing. Then people have been pointing out the fact that Joe Manchin has been recently doing a lot of very interesting votes in regards to certain Biden administration agendas, indicating they might be running either for this office or maybe running for re-election. I don't really know, and personally, I don't really care that much. I only bring this up just to be a quick reminder to everybody, NoLabels is not good. I even had a member of my Discord server, which you can join if you want, that got really mad at NoLabels and said, like, why is NoLabels doing this? NoLabels needs to be pushing for a third party regardless of who is the nominees of either of the parties. To which I said, of course NoLabels doesn't care. Like, of course they don't care. Why would they care? There's never an inkling of them caring. Anyways, let's just get off of the crappy stuff and talk about something that I actually like. And that is FD Signifier. And right away, I might have given away on whether or not if this will be a good or a bad episode of this show. Because you know that the videos that I have that are of people that I like are going to be a hell of a lot different than the ones of people that I don't like. And I guess I'll use this time briefly to explain what the thoughts on videos are. Like, see, some people made the assumption that the thoughts on videos are me taking this evil, bad creator on the left or whatever, and then doing this hardcore breakdown about them. It's like, no, it's literally me giving my thoughts on any creator, whether it be positive or negative. The negative ones happen to have a lot more stuff to say, and I usually will have something written down to explain certain points because I might be critiquing their ideology, I might be critiquing personal drama that they've been through, or like actual big political dramas. So there's usually like something there. For ones that I like, it's a little different because It's really just me singing the praises of a creator that I think is really good. For those who have no clue who this is, let me explain. FD Signifier is a Breadtube creator who joined on May 2nd, 2020 and began posting on July 13th of that year. His channel bio says, "Come here to watch my video essays on black movies and media." That kind of undersells him a little bit because he does a little bit more than just video essays on movies and media, but that is a large part of his content, as video essayists are really the bread and butter of Breadtube, I guess. His first video essay is about the play Hamilton, and he's made other ones about other interesting things, like he's made a video on Black Panther. Videos talking about prominent black celebrities like Dave Chappelle, Kanye West, and Mike Tyson. Has made a bunch of videos talking about the Manosphere, which is a bunch of like collected websites, Twitter users, and users of many other websites that basically spread like misogynist pro-men messaging. One dissecting it, one going into connections regarding it, and one particularly targeting the black community. But the videos that ended up getting my attention were the videos that usually revolved around Breadtube. I'm pretty sure the first video that I watched of his was literally Broke Bread, which now has the very interesting title, "Leftist Infighting Almost Killed Me." We'll get into that when we talk a little bit more about the videos that I have seen, but like, that's just the general type of content that he makes. Video essays, usually revolving around black-oriented issues, but of course from a left-wing bend as well. So right off the bat, if that's not the type of content you're into, then by all means, he ain't your thing. Though I would recommend at least watching one of the video essays on his channel first, before making up your mind. Because honestly, video essays are really cool. I think video essays are really good. I like video essays so much that sometimes there'll just be a random video essay that's recommended to me, and I'll just watch it. I don't know who the creator is. I have no interest in looking further into the creator. I just saw that one video of theirs, and then it's just gone. Sometimes it do be like that. But that video is really entertaining, and you usually learn something from it. I think I legitimately have watched video essays that I literally have no interest in otherwise. But a majority of the ones that I do watch consistently usually are the ones that end up being, the ones that I do like the most. Usually because I do, enjoy the content a lot. But that's the thing. Video essayists are sort of like, it's really hard to truly like video essayists. Basically purely because video essayists, just the way they make content, it usually takes a long time for them to make videos properly, and usually their own personal experiences are not really put into play in regards to the topic in question. So it's usually just again, that's why a lot of video essays are literally just in and gone, and I don't really care much about the creator. FD is of course very different because a lot of it does revolve around personal experiences, especially ones in regards to Breadtube, and ones recently, the one that I most recently tried to watch, I haven't finished it yet, is The Dangerous Myths of Black Men's Sexuality. And then he goes into a little bit of his own history in regarding to him and his friends and explaining sort of things regarding that topic. Honestly, the Broke Bread one is literally the best one that I think he's made so far. Not to say that the other ones haven't been good as well, and I'll prove that by going over some of the other ones first. I want to cover that one last, because save the best for last, but also because it's the first one that I saw, and it's just better if I look over some of the other ones that he's made. And keep in mind, when I say that it's the best one that he's made, I'm basically saying that one gets an A+, and the rest of them get an A. The first one that I'll talk about is his video, Why I Don't Dream of Labor Doesn't Work, where he goes over this concept called I Don't Dream of Labor, which is a thing I think most people think about. It's where people don't want to work. People do not want to work, they don't dream of working, but we have this mindset of the hustler and whatever, and it is commonly pushed on certain people of certain groups. Of course, he would be talking about how it's very pushed hard on the black community, going into a topic called John Henryism, and it gives you things. It gives you things to think about. I knew about John Henry. I grew up in America. I've read folk tales. I know what John Henry is, but then I'm like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. John Henryism. It's honestly hard for me to put it into words like the video, because he says it in a way better way. But that's usually the catalyst of a lot of the videos that I've been watching outside of the Breadtube one, because it's like, he starts off with something that's like, I kind of know a little bit about this topic, but I really don't know like the full ins and outs of it. So I'm going to go and look into the full ins and outs of it from his perspective and see how it goes. An example was very recently I watched his complex history of Mike Tyson. I mean, I knew a little bit about Mike Tyson. I like certain things that Mike Tyson has done. I know this is kind of shallow, but I like the Mike Tyson mysteries. And I knew some of the issues about Mike Tyson growing up. You know, his like how he was bullied for the way he spoke, him being relentless when he was fighting. But I wanted to know like more. Like clearly there was more to the subject than I knew about. So I was like, let's see what FT Signifier has to say about it. And then he goes full on into sort of systemic issues with how African Americans have been treated in the US. It's sort of like I mean, we see this joke about video essays all the time where it's like, oh, we're going to talk about SpongeBob SquarePants. And then the first part of the video essay is like, a part 1, the silent film era. And FT Signifier does that a little bit with a lot of his video topics. But it's like, the reason why he does it is because there's more to the topic than you know. A really good one that I saw recently, like very recently, is his 2-part series on Barack Obama. And that was one that's like, okay, yeah, I'm very interested. I'm very interested to see this one. Because when you go on Breadtube or LeftTube or anything else, you get almost the immediate same reaction in regards to Barack Obama. Like, everybody says the exact same thing about Obama. And it just so happens a lot of the prominent members of this community, they're not necessarily in Obama's target demographic. Meanwhile, FT Signifier is, while sure, a white progressive can look at the Obama administration and feel some sort of disappointment or whatever, but what about someone from FT Signifier's point of view? What did he think of the Obama administration? And of course, as this would suggest, what does he think about it now? And since I had watched some other videos of his, I was like, I genuinely don't know what route he will take with this video. And when I finished the video, I'm like, oh, this is actually a very interesting angle that I have not thought about before. I don't really want to give away the conclusion that he comes to, because it would seem like unfair to do that when it's like, why would you get it from this when you can get a far more poignant explanation from him? All I will say is that he takes everything into account, and gives a nuanced answer that a lot of people probably would not think of. Another video of his that I really liked was his sort of 2-part video essay in regards to black conservatism. Part 1 being why black people have never been conservatives, and the other part being the real faces of black conservatism. I think I watched the second one first, but the first one definitely catches your attention, considering the thumbnail of it literally says, "Our problem started here," and then it points to a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. Definitely gonna catch a lot of eyes with that thumbnail. His real faces of black conservatism video sort of go into the 3 broad categories of because the thing is he points out this video is not about Candace Owens. His video is not about Larry Elder. His video is not about Tom Sowell. Because as he states, those people don't speak for the black community. They don't even try to reach to the black community. They are talking to white people. They're targeting themselves to white people. They really have no connection to the black community outside of their skin tone, and have no actual hold within sort of black political thought. His intention was to focus on the people who do have prominent reach within the black community and black political thought, dividing them into 3 categories: the distraction, the double agent, and the capitalist. Going over how those 3 are sort of the actual faces of black conservatism. The distraction being representative by Louis Farrakhan, who he explains is basically sheep herding African Americans from actual leftist and anti-capitalist political thought into this reactionary type politics that the Nation of Islam espouses. The black capitalist would be pretty obvious, and the double agent is represented by people like Bill Cosby. I guess sort of like the older boomer type generation of African Americans who sort of have this idea in their mind that sort of treats like black youth and black culture in a negative light, referencing the infamous pound cake speech that he made. But the video of his that struck the biggest chord with me is leftist infighting almost killed me, broke bread. And I think it's literally because like it was at a time where I was fully starting to grasp the critiques of a lot of the prominent BreadTube creators, or the BreadTube genre as a whole. I mentioned this briefly in my video about like BreadTube, where it's like why I don't like BreadTube or something. He brought up a lot of the criticisms of BreadTube that I was having, and I'm like, this is good. I actually think this is rather poignant. These are a lot of the same ideas and stuff that I had in my head. But this vastly larger creator has more of a actual good explanation about it. And I don't know if this video was the one that sort of introduced this concept, but I guess I'll mention this here. Where it's like he brought up the idea of something called Cornbreadtube, because one of the major criticisms of BreadTube is that it's too white, and it's too sort of focused on like a subsection of like white, cis, mostly hetero type streamer debate bros. It goes into all the issues about how their type of content sort of like sows drama. And this is coming from somebody who is supposed to be a fan of the so-called creators that he derides in the video, like Vosh. Like, he doesn't like Vosh, and he expresses a lot of criticisms to Vosh. And I'm a fan of Vosh, but it's like, I do get basically a lot of the criticisms that he says. Do I 100% agree with everything that he said? No. And if there was ever a point where it was like, I'm in the same room as FD Signifier, or in the same Zoom call as FD Signifier, I'm sure that me and him could come to an understanding about like what are the ins and outs of like the criticisms. But here are the only actual like salient criticisms that he says that are like I don't necessarily agree with. For starters, where he talks about Professor Flowers. Now, the whole Professor Flowers situation is a whole big drama, especially in and of itself. But for those who remember, Vosh and Professor Flowers had a debate about something. I don't remember what it was, but it was something. And what happened is Vosh made a lot of statements to her, deriding certain things and calling her a Nazi. And she was a bit mad at him. So basically, it was just this really crappy shit show of a debate. One side basically claiming that Vosh is an evil white supremacist for treating Professor Flowers this way, and other people saying that Professor Flowers is a black Nazi, to the point where even to this day, Xander Hall, literally when he discusses this topic, he literally says that Professor Flowers is a black Nazi. Now that is, of course, verifiably untrue. Here's where the contention is, because a lot of people say the reason why they keep calling her a black Nazi is because allegedly she made comments that were very much Nazi-esque. And by that, she essentially gave a go-ahead to ethnostates. Now, when I say, what does that mean? Basically, the whole point of the discussion was that Vosh was trying to lead her into the talking point, and she essentially said, like, if a certain area wants to decolonize, and it just so happens that they want to do it via this, I can't necessarily denounce them. And that was the clip that was then used to say that Professor Flowers is a Nazi. Now, a lot of people on, like, Professor Flowers' side, which would include FD Signifier, say that the clip doesn't exist, and that there is no point in the debate where she signs on to ethnostates. Where I contend is that, yes, she did, technically. The only contention you could make to that is that Vosh was pushing her to make that point, which, yeah, I would say is probably true, 100% true. That was very obviously the clip that Vosh was trying to get in the debate. There was another point that I was going to make, but I honestly forgot it. If it comes back to me, I'll say it. If it doesn't, oh well, that point is lost to time. But yeah, I honestly thought that video was very poignant and explained a lot of the good, valid criticisms towards sort of the Vosh community or whatever. And one big thing that showed how it was very interesting is that he didn't just rely on like the same old like things about Vosh. Like he didn't go like, oh, Vosh is a pedo, ergo we shouldn't talk about him. And he didn't automatically like just dismiss people like Vosh or Zan. Okay, maybe he did that a little bit for Xanderhall, but honestly, who can blame him? But he did, like, he was fair. Like, he was legitimately fair. Like, he didn't just automatically go like, oh, cancel Vosh and Zan, they're evil, irredeemable, whatever. He gave them props where things were due. Like, for example, he talked about how they defended Merrick, Punished Mother, on Twitter for their scandal that happened, and they're like, yeah, Vosh and Zan stood up for her. The debate bros, even though usually you would think of them as like they're the ones instigating sort of drama on this side, they defended her in this drama. FD also brings up the fact that all this drama talk and like shit talking isn't exclusive to the debate bros. It is in fact very common on quote unquote the other side of the issue as well. That Vosh and Zan will be heavily mistreated by people who hate them. And that kind of fairness and courtesy really, really, really does good. The only thing I would have liked is if he reached out to them to try and get a discussion on their end. I can understand why he probably wouldn't, but I mean, it would have been nice to see it attempted. The unfortunate truth of the matter would have been that Vosher and or Zan probably would have then tried to make a clip about it, be like, I debate FD Signifier. And it's like, no, why don't you just come on for like an actual discussion or something? Then they would say something like, oh, we're only doing this so that he doesn't misrepresent us. Even though an easy solution would be simply just to record it privately and then post it like unlisted or whatever. Then when the doc drops, you can then like drop a link like, here's the full discussion that me and him had. But unfortunately, Vosh and Zan probably didn't do any favors to get them invited to the next big LeftTube documentary because of how they freaking treated FD Signifier's video when it dropped. Legit, seeing that Vosh literally just skipped 50 minutes into the video, was completely lost, and then Zan watching that and then going, I can figure out the rest of the video from this. It's just kind of like freaking stupid. And here's the part where people who are diehard fans of either of those two are going to go into the comment section and say something like, but FD Signifier is friends with DJ Mule. FD Signifier is friends with Professor Flowers. These are bad creators and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't care. I honestly don't really care about any of that. I really don't care about any of this whole like, oh, this streamer is friends with this streamer, and this debate person is friends with this debate person, and like this video essayist is friends with this person. It's like, I literally don't care, honestly. I mean, there are like some exceptions. I might make a video about it at one point, or just keep it to myself, more than likely. But I mean, if you're really gonna do the whole like, oh, we need to be puritanical about who we support because of their associations, it's like, I genuinely would like to see the subscription feeds of those particular people who want to make this claim, because I guarantee you, if I looked, I could find many different associations that they are approving of, especially considering they more than likely are fans of Vosh, and Vosh has known to have a couple of associations that are pretty bad, if not very much a lot of dramas in regards to him that are bad, that should probably be cancel worthy. Anyways, that's pretty much all I gotta say on this topic. FD Signifier is becoming a pretty good creator, and I hope that Cornbreadtube becomes more than just a hashtag. What I would like is for BreadTube to be united as one, but if we're at the point where we have to give some sections of it to certain creators, then I'm for it as well. I mean, I'm perfectly down for having like BreadTube, Cornbreadtube, TortillaTube, whatever the heck else. Creators of all different colors should be represented. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're some more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.